This is the Shogun podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're back talking about Shogun Chapter 6, Ladies of the Willow World.
She wishes to explain to you the meaning of the Willow World. こちらにおいでになる方は皆様、忘れたいものをお持ちでございまする。退屈、痛み、苦しみ、落胆。Most come here to escape from boredom or pain, hardship or disappointment. 皆様ここは快楽に溺れるための場所と思っておられます。They believe this place is about physical pleasure. それだけでは Which it is. ございまする。But it can be more. 私がお相手をする方々は The people she meets wish for a different life or circumstance. 別のところへ行きたいとね。They want to be any place other than where they are. 私はかような望みを叶えて差し上げております。I offer you relief from this. And safety. To create one perfect moment that you wish to inhabit completely.
Welcome back, fellow warriors, to TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about Chapter 6 of Shogun, Ladies of the Willow World. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow warriors. I am one of your other hosts, John.
Back half now of the season of Shogun on episode 6.
Yeah, moving into the second half of the season now. So we'll see how this unfolds.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good episode though this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Some really fantastic moments here for me. So yeah, we'll get into those, I guess, as we get into our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. But as always, to remind you, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please hop on over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can subscribe to any good or villainous podcast catcher of your choice. You can also send us feedback on Shogun to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or pop on and join us over on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries, where there's a spoiler post up for each episode as they come out, and we discuss our feedback from our wonderful fellow warriors on the following episode each week. So as always, looking forward to hearing your thoughts about the episode as well.
Yeah, definitely keep that feedback coming in for sure. Yeah. Loving everyone's comments and thoughts on this show so far. But shall we get into our spoiler-filled discussion? Derek, who gave us what, where, when, and how for Chapter 6, Ladies of the Willow World?
Well, as always to mention, the show is based on the James Clavell 1975 novel of the same name. This episode was written by Maegan Houang. Maegan is a writer-director based in Los Angeles and Michigan, and she's a story editor on Shogun. Currently, she's writing a movie for A24 called Necrocosm.
Okay.
It's her next big project.
Yeah, interesting.
That's
A24.
I was going to say, yeah, that production studio attached to any project makes me interested in seeing
definitely.
If you don't know who they are, they're probably their biggest success is Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was Oscar-winning and fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, go check it out, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, interested to see what Necrocosm is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like, as you say, it's just A24. They just bring out some really good, independent, just tales, different stories, and with really good people involved, so it's almost like this outlet for the bigger studio system to do something a bit different.
Exactly. So interested to see what Maegan does over there. This episode was directed by Hiromi Kamata. Hiromi is a Japanese-Mexican director who also directed 2 episodes of Monarch: Legacy of Monsters. Which starred on Sawai, who plays Mariko in Shogun, of course. So they've worked together quite a bit before.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Really enjoyed watching Monarch as well.
Yeah, it was a good show, wasn't it?
Good show.
Bit of Godzilla in your weekly, or at least the threat of Godzilla for most of the season. Good stuff. So, John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for Shogun Chapter 6, Ladies of the Willow World?
Sure. Lady Ochiba returns to Osaka in order to accelerate the Regents' campaign against Toranaga. Meanwhile, in Ajiro, Toranaga tests Mariko's loyalty to his cause. Interesting stuff. Well, I mean, we do start with a flashback.
We do. Yeah.
To get a little bit of insight into both Mariko, but also Lady Ochiba as well. So,
absolutely. Well, let's go straight into there with our top Bushido points. Bushido number 1, Mariko and Lady Ochiba. And their first meeting, I guess, we see in this flashback at the beginning. So we get
22 years ago.
Yep.
And interesting kind of contrast here in that you get the sense of Mariko and Lady Ochiba, who's known as Ruri, at this stage of her life, being actually really good friends, you know, within the court of Ruri's father. Yet you see, you know, in contrast, a tension between Mariko's father and Ochiba's father, or Ruri's father. Here
absolutely.
At this time, you know, Mariko's father being Lord Akeshi Jinsai, and is a new vassal of Ochiba's father here, but yet seemingly a fairly tense relationship, and sometimes at odds with one another.
Oh, absolutely. And I suppose because we know now the story of Mariko and what her father did, he's the one that killed Kuroda. He's the one that killed Lady Oshiba's father. So, so it's interesting seeing it through the eyes of these two kids being put together, being pushed together at the beginning. I like that you actually see Mariko being forced to bow, almost like, this is how you welcome a new guest. Bow in front of her, and now the two of you are friends. You must welcome her into our society. You must take care of her. And then you see kind of throughout the episode, you see it going through their lives together and how close they were.
Well, that's it. And you also see the innocence of youth in that they spot, both fathers arguing. And, they wonder why. It's all slightly lost on them, really.
Yeah, exactly.
But ultimately, we see Kuroda, Lady Ochiba's father, beheading a group of people in front of Jinsai.
That's really brutal to watch, and you can see Jinsai being held back by Toranaga as he's about to challenge effectively the leader of their country and what he's doing. Kuroda's taking so much pleasure almost in this massacre of Buddhist monks with his own sword. It's not like he's sending out his men to destroy them. He's bringing one up at a time and beheading them. But the reaction from Jinsai is that he wants to stop this immediately, and then he realizes his daughter is right there watching on and tells her it's just a dream. Go back to bed. Basically, you're having a bad dream.
And of course, after that, we see Mariko sort of later on being married into the Toda clan to Buntaro. And it's really, again, she doesn't know why her father is doing this. As far as she can see, it's a worthless clan. It's a worthless alliance, and has no real sense as to why he would do this. There's a real great moment as she's putting on sort of her wedding hood almost, and she's looking at her father, Akeshi, and just the eye contact between them, and almost, what are you doing to me? And,
exactly.
Within this, there is an element being described about a duty that lasts and a duty to serve a greater purpose.
Yes.
So, whilst this seems like a worthless alliance, I'm sure there are motivations around her father doing this.
Yes.
So, really good flashback here to see, I guess, some start of the issues that are in the present, but also to see that Mariko and Lady Ochiba, were friends. I mean, is this something that lasts? We do hear later that she hasn't seen Lady Ochiba since. So is it something that Lady Ochiba will be thinking of fondly if they meet again, when they meet again?
Well, yeah, I suppose the big story here, as you say, is these two were friends, but her father killed Oshiba's father, putting her on this path. We see more about Lady Ochiba, how she became Lady Ochiba no Tada. We see that this path leads her to become the consort of the Taiko, giving him an heir to take over the country, and that's the whole path that's born out of her father being killed by Mariko's father. So that's really important, that yes, they may have been friends when they were young, but her life changed forever because of her father. And while her father and all of her family were killed, Mariko has been forced to stay alive by Buntaro for this whole time.
Yeah,
so
but also
I don't think it's going to be a friendly meeting between Lady Ochiba and Mariko.
Absolutely, but also survived
Yes.
the executions of her whole family by her father.
Yeah.
Survived that because of the marriage. So,
Exactly.
Protected, almost taken off the chessboard, so to speak, with this marriage.
Exactly. There was just another really interesting bit that was in there from the in the flashbacks where we see Mariko training. It seems like the entire court are watching on as she's training, and they're all commenting. That you hear whispers of how good she is. She's a great warrior. But in the corner, you see her future husband, Buntaro, watching on with just a dead blank stare on his face. So again, when she has that moment with her father where she's looking at him going, why are you sending me off with this guy? She did realize, or she did notice Buntaro. She knows who he is and seems to have absolutely no interest in her. So why would she be married into this loveless relationship with a clan that isn't strategically worthwhile? So,
but it's equally loveless from her because she just doesn't see it as being right for, in a sense, her station in the court. It's worthless to her. So it's almost sort of the Toda clan is beneath her. So it's an interesting dynamic in that.
Exactly. And, again, we'll talk about it in another point, but I like that this has stayed with her for her entire life. She never knew what the reason that her father had sent her off was. We learned that from Toranaga later on, which we will talk about. But I like that it goes through her entire life. She has this in the back of her mind the whole time. My father had to slaughter everybody else in my family. I'm the last remaining member of the bloodline. And I don't know why he did it. He put me into this awful relationship. Yeah. Still not knowing the reason why. So that's where we'll leave, I guess, our flashback of Bushido.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to say, that kind of marrying for power and alliances. And yet here, this marriage seems to be of a different nature because it's taking her away from the power, center of power around Toranaga, the court and so on, by marrying her into a clan that is deemed to be, small, relatively unimportant by comparison to a number of other families. So, yeah, it's an interesting move, on the chessboard.
Absolutely, and I suppose it's one of those tales that comes from history, of course, but it's been taken into lots and lots of popular stories about these types of unions between different clans. Again, we always mention Game of Thrones. I'm not even going to apologize for it anymore. But just that reference of, picking a member of your family to unite two houses, even if there's no connection between the two of them for a future purpose that really matters to the empire effectively. So while Mariko may not know the reason for this marriage, it's a fundamentally really important thing, and it's what kept her alive, which is really interesting. So let's go on to our Bushido number 2. Chief Admiral John Blackthorne, another step on the ladder to greatness in Japan, even though he may not want it.
I mean, he's being showered with gifts. I mean, he saved Toranaga from a soily death.
He did.
Basically in the last episode. And we see here in front of all his surviving captains, allies, generals, that he's lost many men from the after effects of the earthquake.
Yes, yeah.
But here, he calls out John Blackthorne as having saved his life again. But I mean, he's being showered with gifts. I mean, what did they do in ancient Egypt? They would cover them with gold, and then that was their kind of payment if they'd done something really well.
Yeah.
But here he gets a fief, which will give him an income of 600 cuckoos. He is named the Chief Admiral of Kanto, Toranaga's Chief Admiral, and becomes a general of the Cannon Regiment. So, I mean, immediately, no sooner has poor Omi gotten the regiment of cannons, it is taken away from him. Or at least it is the barbarian who is over him and in charge of it. So, all of this is being noted by Omi, and I do like the way that he's absolutely vexed, concerned with all these gifts being showered on the barbarian. And I love the conversation with Yabushige, because he's actually, in the end, has become less concerned about the barbarian and more concerned with the oncoming fruitless war that's about to happen. So, he's like, I think he jokingly says to his aide, I think it's time for another will. So it's just, I love that, this is kind of consuming Omi here, that the barbarian, the one that he effectively urinated over in episode 1, is now suddenly a chief admiral, a general of sort of a very important regiment of cannons, and has now also been given a fief. And so, being showered with gifts here.
Well, it almost feels personal for Omi. It's like as if, he gets given something and then it's taken away from him at the last moment and handed over to the barbarian. Yeah. But, he's got that quest for power, that absolute lust for power. And as you say, in that conversation with Yabushige, he's looking at him going, I just had this cannon regiment. And Yabushige firstly reminding him, it's not yours, it was always mine. And now Toranaga's taken it back, so it's always been Toranaga's. Them's the breaks, kid, basically. It's kind of the way he's saying it, because, why are you worried about one man when we've got an onslaught coming, effectively, which we will also have to navigate and survive. But on John himself, he doesn't understand why he's getting these honours. He's standing in front of this entire crowd of Toranaga's clan, effectively everything being translated, of course, by Mariko, and he's just incredulous at this idea that, all he wants is his ship and his men back.
Yeah, he wants to leave Japan, ultimately. He wants to leave Japan in order to fight against and disrupt the Portuguese operations in this area, which he feels is aligned with Toranaga, except he doesn't know about the deal that Toranaga made with the priests and the captain of the black ship as he was leaving Osaka. So actually, as Mariko says, it is not in the interests of Toranaga what you are asking, what you want me to translate. And Toranaga is quite clear, that the Anjin will not be granted his request.
Yes.
He will be getting these gifts whether he likes them or not.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he doesn't understand them because he's said to Toranaga in the past, I cannot do what you are asking me.
I do love the conversation though when John is going effectively to where Toranaga's holding court and gets time with him to ask this question: why do you want me to do this? I told you I can't provide the service that you want me to provide. And Toranaga's response is, well, what kind of service is it that you will provide for me? So again, even though all John wants is to get his men back and his ship back, Toranaga's going, you will serve me no matter what way you cut it. I have decided you will be of service to me, which is really good. As part of that, I suppose, him sitting in court, he also has Buntaro come to him to plead forgiveness for the slights that he made last week, the attack he made on his wife, I suppose, which, as we said in the last episode, brought dishonor to his household. And he's being told by Toranaga he now has to keep his distance from Mariko for the next 7 days. But Buntaro, even though he's asking for forgiveness here, he's effectively telling Toranaga that there's something going on between John and his wife Mariko. He's seen something in her eyes. He's spent however many years now, 15 years probably, married to her, maybe 10 years married to her. And during that time, all she's been is cold as ice to him.
Yeah.
Yet, when she speaks to John, he can see a complete difference in how she talks to him and how they react around each other, something that he, as her husband, has never seen in her. So that's quite interesting that he's having that conversation, and that reminds Toranaga to effectively challenge Mariko, telling her he can't see that within his clan. Their clan need to be tight, their clan need to be together. He can't see a division being caused by John and Mariko, and they need to work.
Absolutely.
Work that out.
And I mean, he's playing it off on both sides in that, as you say, he has that frank conversation with Mariko, but he also then says with Buntaro, why don't you just divorce her then? What are you wanting here? And also she's doing what I'm asking. So this might look strange, but ultimately I'm asking her to do a duty here, which involves the barbarian. And that's what you need to trust in, is that it's for duty and nothing else.
Exactly.
So,
but it is really interesting, of course, as his translator, as John's translator, what Buntaro is also probably experiencing is there's a certain intimacy between the two of them because they're both speaking a completely different language to each other that nobody else can penetrate. Nobody else can hear what they're talking about. They can, of course, get the intimation if he's angry or if he's saying something that's a joke or something like that. They can get part of that, but between the two of them, they have their own little bubble between them where they can talk about anything. And you feel from that conversation around the dinner table in last week's episode, you feel that Buntaro was noticing the way that she was talking to John and telling him, secrets of their family almost, telling him how not to make Buntaro angry, that kind of thing, in the same room as him, that intimacy will have been seen by her husband, which was really interesting. And I guess then the final movement of this discussion between Toranaga and Mariko is that he tells her there's one more gift that John needs. He needs to be pillowed. He needs to be taken to the tea rooms, and that is going to be the next reward that he has for him. Which is pretty big. Mariko...
Mariko has to be with him, has to accompany him in case he talks in his sleep or talks when he's pillowed.
Yeah.
In order that any kind of information or advantage is extracted from this pillowing.
Yes, that's a pretty difficult task if you're Mariko. And again, we know that she did sleep with John already, thinking her husband was dead. She has slept with John before, and now she's being asked to bring him to a brothel and be in the same room as him while he's being pillowed.
But I think we should get on to Bushido number 3, the tea rooms, because yes, there is this pillowing of John Blackthorne.
Yes.
Again, another interesting thing, it is with Lady Kiku's and her services. And Lady Kiku is the courtesan for Omi.
Yes.
So again, Omi is kind of like, I think he has a conversation with Toranaga's son, actually, as they see him returning from the night in the tea rooms, just to jump ahead slightly, where he says, he seems a very fortunate man. He gets a lot of lucky breaks here.
Yeah.
But equally, again, it's almost another slight to Omi here, which I find kind of interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like as if something that he had has been taken away from him. Kiku speaks to him beforehand. She goes to him beforehand and tells him about what's happening, but then they have no contact afterwards. He's not allowed to see her. So she's there. But let's talk about the other great scene in the episode, the negotiation with Jin, the leader of the tea room, where Mariko and Fuji sit down to talk to Jin and negotiate the price for effectively taking over the tea room for the night.
Yeah, it's just, I found this, and there were 3 scenes, this was one of them, I think the other one was in the tea house as well, just so really well observed. I love just sort of, it was all really done in kind of close up, this negotiation, from the faces of Jin, Fuji, and Mariko, to the lacquer work of cups that, Fuji's kind of saying, "Oh, I'm really sorry we're giving you, it's almost like the worst lacquer work cups that we have for this tea," as they're trying to negotiate a price for Lady Kiku's services. And it's all kind of, the negotiation is kicking off, but it's all on a misunderstanding in that Jin believes this is for Toranaga, when in fact it is for the engine. And, I just kind of love how once this is revealed that it's for the engine, Lady Jin asks, well, will you be joining him to Mariko, as you're never seeing apart? And there's just this lovely close-up of Fuji taking a sip from the cup, with this kind of knowing look on her face, almost trying to actually suppress a little bit of a grin.
Yes, absolutely. And it's like, ooh, the tea is being spilt.
Yeah, and it's all kind of fairly awkward, but it's so lovely. This negotiation between with these 3 women.
Oh, absolutely. But I suppose this is what's so good in the writing here and what's so good in the performances here. At a surface level, the conversation that they're having is so polite, so lovely.
Yeah.
Effectively Jin's saying to them, "Oh, I love the beautiful cups that you have here." But she's looking down on them. She's saying, this new house with John Blackthorne at the head can't even afford good cups to serve.
All the crockery, cutlery, whatever is like, it looks a bit shabby.
Exactly. But of course, you know, to the point Fuji's going, but actually there was just a mudslide and an earthquake. So like everybody in the town, we're still recovering. This is the best we possibly have available. But you can tell underneath the surface of this politeness from Jin, there is that slight, she's trying to undermine, you're not the rich house.
Exactly. And she introduces the notion of this Willow world as well, which almost hides things from the outside world. You know, it's a safe space to keep prying eyes away. And this is part of the reason why she's asking whether Mariko is also going to come, and having sort of that little barb about, well, you never seem separated from the Anjin.
Exactly.
But it's ultimately, she has been requested and ordered to by Toranaga.
Yeah.
But there is also that want of her that you see come out here. And I think it leads to another really great moment here once Blackthorne with Mariko and Lady Kiku are at the tea house, as Kiku explains this Willow world, you know, this safe space, this relief from your present situation, and to provide a perfect moment. But it's also subtly done because she actually stands behind Mariko as she says it. So it's almost like she's being the voice of Mariko to John Blackthorne for her. Like, she is interpreting their feelings for her in a way that Mariko has said she will not do again.
Yes.
You know, I will only speak to you through the words of others as I am the interpreter. Yeah. And it's all kind of flipped in this scene, and it is just so fantastic. And I really like that.
Yeah.
And as she invites John Blackthorne through, you know, she asks Mariko, will you also be joining us? And she doesn't, but she is touched softly by John as he makes his way through.
Yes.
And there's this kind of like, you know, the eyes close. It's like breathing out of Mariko, like, because she's had to be so self-disciplined. You know, those rules of the eightfold fence are being employed massively.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're being tested as well, because again, as I mentioned, the intimacy of being the translator for John. She's here, she's telling him he must compliment Kiko and how beautiful she looks, so she's giving him the words to speak to Kiku before they go off and pillow together. And then, as you say, Kiku's speaking through her, telling John to picture the one that he loves, and then picture her unclothed as well, as Mariko's translating that back to him. So definitely hot and bothered as she's saying that. But it's also interesting on the back of the conversation that they had with Toranaga at his court, or the discussion that they had, where she was pushing back against translating directly what John was saying, and then said, I'm reminded that a translator is here to translate and nothing more.
Yeah.
And here she is in court with Kiku in the tea rooms, having to say exactly the words that Kiku is saying. But you're right, she is asked whether she'll join or not, but she mistranslates that and says to John, this is a space for you and you alone, to him, even though Toranaga effectively said to her, you must be in the room in case he talks during pillowing, right? So she made that choice herself not to go into the room.
Absolutely.
And Kiku was saying to her she can.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
So that's interesting. So I presume she'll tell Toranaga that she did.
Yeah.
And
I
there was nothing
so,
said by John. So yeah, what an interesting scene, and what a great use again of translation. You know, we've seen some great examples of this throughout the season. The first or second episode where John and Toranaga are first having their discussion, and we were talking about the camera just focusing on John and taking the translator out of it, so it looked like the two of them were talking directly to each other, and this time taking Kiku out of it, so it looks like Mariko is talking directly to John and saying the real words that she wants to say to him, but can't.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so beautifully observed, this intimacy that's kind of can't be said. And you see the toughness of it for Mariko and for John. As I say, he touches her hand, very inappropriate in this moment.
Absolutely.
But, that's his suggestion back to her. And I just thought it was really, really good. And I think I just thought this was fantastic TV.
Absolutely. And, again, the great observation that was made from Mariko when she talked about the Eightfold Fence to John, where she was saying, you may see all of our rituals, you may see all of the things that we do, but realize behind all of that there's a lot more to interpret. So we see that multiple times in this episode. I think there's a great moment with Kiku where she's pouring the sake and John drinks it. We hear that there's a whole training process that goes through how to pour the sake. She gets another jug of sake brought in by one of the younger girls within the tea rooms. And then there's the discussion between the two of them about the empty spaces. She points to where the jug used to be, effectively indicating to the younger member of the girls in the tea room, it would be great if you weren't here. It would be great if you were part of that empty space. Get out. This is supposed to be an intimate moment between me and our clients. Get out now, basically. And she's, thank you very much, Elder. So I love the interpretation between the two of them. You're seeing the subtitles on screen, and if you were just to read the subtitles without the intent behind them, you wouldn't get that. Yeah. This is a really polite dismissal. Get out of here. Stop listening in, because this is the other side of it. Yes, they're not getting Lord Toranaga down here, which would have been a big coup almost for Jin. She's saying, this isn't like an average tea room across the country when she's in the negotiation. She's saying this is a very special place. So she was very open to having Lord Toranaga. They're not getting him, but they are getting the Anjin. So everybody in there is really interested to know what's going on behind those closed doors.
Absolutely.
So I really like that. These are just such good moments in the tea room. We've complimented many departments on the show, things like, the filming and the direction and the background actors and the cast and the writing, all that kind of stuff. But I have one more department to compliment here. I would guess it was the makeup team, because when we see John return from the tea room the following morning, he looks wrecked. He looks like he's had a very long night. Maybe the actor went out and had a few drinks the night before to prepare his face to look like he has been awake all night, but he looks like he's had a very good night with Kiku and looks very disorientated when he comes out the following morning. So well done, makeup crew.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's go on to Bushido number 4. Let's return to Osaka, because even though all of these more personal moments are happening in the fishing village with Toranaga, in Osaka there's quite big movements going on, represented here with the play that's being put on, and it seems like it's being put on for Lady Ochiba. And it's weird, I'd probably never thought about this before, but in earlier times of Kings and Queens, you absolutely would have plays being written about their lives and performed directly in front of them.
Yeah, exactly.
But here it's just the uncomfortableness of what's actually happening on stage in front of Ochiba. It's talking about the fact that she is the mother of the future heir of Japan and how she got into that position and how she became the consort of the Taiko. But it feels really awkward to watch the play.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved all this kind of the machinations of court, and it's kind of playing out with, I think it's kabuki, the theatre, the performances with I think the no performances, and you have it on a number of different levels here. It's telling the court of Lady Oshiba's success here, really, for providing the Taiko and heir. It's also that Ishido and Lady Ochiba are trying to woo Lord Ito. And so you have that fantastic thing after the play where they effectively are recruit him as a nomination for the Council of Regents. And also within the play, from the audience perspective, you have everyone is, dutifully looking on at this fantastic performance by Lord Ito and the story of how the Taiko got an heir. But you have the two Christian regents in Sugiyama and Kiyama, talking about how there'll always be hostages now, because what's happened is they're holding all the regents hostage in Osaka because of potential threat to the heir. And
what we talked about last week. That was what Lady Ochiba set up effectively when she arrived back.
And also to force a vote against Toranaga. We see actually slightly earlier Hiromatsu escaping to warn Toranaga of this from Osaka. But within the play, as I say, the two Christian regents, but also you have the Daioin Lady Io there, then talking with Lady Ochiba about, Ishido is good, but he's not great. Is this the alliance that you really want to sort of pin your hopes to? And you have these flashbacks then throughout the Kabuki play, seeing Ochiba effectively, the story playing out as it is being depicted by the actors, and it's just really, really good,
But I think that's what makes it so difficult to watch as well, because you're seeing the real story, exactly what must be going on in Oshiba's head. There's someone on stage here who's interpreting it as this great moment in the history of Japan where the heir was conceived and where I became the only person who could give a new heir. And she's flashing back to how awful it was for her. She was effectively the daughter of the previous leader of Japan, who has been now co-opted by the new Taiko and being told you effectively have to bed him. And I'm not 100% sure in the translation. I'd love if one of our listeners could translate it a bit better for me. But she gets the title of Oshiba no Tada, which I think means no title. I'm not 100% sure. It's like, it's almost like she's being told everything you had in the past as Ruri is being removed away from you. You now have a new title. You're not the queen. You're not the new leader's wife. You are just the person who's there to give him an heir. And if you do, then you will have a place in court.
Yes.
It seems really brutal to go from the position that she was in previously to now the new leader of the country is bedding her to deliver a new heir. And you even see the awful sex scene between her and the Taiko.
Yeah. And you hear later about how, she was fed different herbs and concoctions in order to effectively, numb her in a sense to sort of, in order for this to happen. And I think again, this happens and we have Lord Ito being nominated and brought forward for the council, and you have these kind of sort of mechanisms and playing out. But the other lovely thing about the whole range of scenes in Osaka, and again, I think it's just really wonderfully observed, is this alliance or relationship beginning between Ishido and Lady Ochiba, because, Ishido is almost kind of like enamored with her to some extent. He's kind of really intrigued, why she has such a hatred of Toranaga. And she's not, earlier on in the episode, she doesn't tell him, but she says, if you eliminate him, it will be your shadow that we're speaking of, the great shadow of Ishido, not the Taiko. Exactly. If you are able to eliminate him. And, but also kind of saying, you don't know what you're up against. Even this, it's Lady Io's sort of concerns about who she's allying with is almost like she actually says that, you don't know what you're up against.
Yeah.
And you need me. It is the subtle inference from that. You need me because I know exactly who Toranaga is. And as this goes through the episode, she does tell Ishido, she says, I saw him plotting. Talking, whispering. Yes, it was Jinsai who killed my father.
Yes.
But I blame Toranaga.
Toranaga behind it. Or Jinsai is already gone. He still has to answer for the death of my father.
Exactly.
This is revenge here, and this is so fiery revenge.
It really is.
Just underneath the surface. And again, cutting it back to the play is putting this all on stage as if it's this beautiful moment that led to the future of Japan. And underneath, you can see it burning in her because she has these memories of what actually happened.
Exactly.
She wants revenge on a person who led to the death of her family.
It's, she goes, it's Toranaga who planned my father's death. And, back to episode 1, what kind of person can be successful in a place like this, that you have Rodriguez saying to John Blackthorne, she says, his secret heart is not a secret to me.
Exactly.
She understands Toranaga perfectly. At least she thinks she does.
She does. Yeah. From her perspective, let's say.
From her perspective.
Yeah.
So this is really interesting because it's like this is the true matchup in a sense that's happening here. And it's so well done. I just think that the look on her face, it's almost the passive aggressiveness that she has, this veil of serenity, yet she talks about revenge in the most sort of neutral of way, but and bound by the customs and rules, and it's just so, again, well observed. I love how all of this is played in terms of how the camera is used, the writing, and the performances. It's so good. I absolutely loved this as well. Really good. But it doesn't all go to plan. They've now brought in Lord Ito to be the 5th member of the council, which allows them to hopefully now all be allied and take out Toranaga to impeach him effectively. But there's a block. Sugiyama is realizing that he's going to effectively be a puppet of Ishido, and is not willing to accept that. So he's the one that blocks it. They've put the new puppet in place. Lord Ito instantly says, yes, absolutely, impeach Toranaga. Effectively, he knows that's why he's there. But it goes around the room and gets to Sugiyama. We saw the breakdown of this group in last week's episode, where they were no longer able to agree on things and sometimes no longer sitting in the same room where they would be. But Sugiyama here realizing, if he does this vote that they've all talked about many, many times, to impeach Toranaga, if he does this vote, then he will forever be a slave to Ishido. Well, that's it. And yet you have Kiyama and Ono towing the line here. And ultimately it means that Ochiba is growing impatient. And so we have the moment where this refusal to vote for Lord Ito onto the council effectively gets Sugiyama slain along with his family. And who knows how the rest of his clan and his clan alliances go. But this is, in effect, a coup of the council. And the harmony that was supposed to be there, and how the council was supposed to operate.
Yes. But they've done it again. They've removed another member of this council of 5 that must vote. There must be a vote of 5 people on this council to impeach Toranaga, and they've killed Sugiyama. So now they have to find another replacement for Sugiyama on this council so that they can impeach Toranaga. So that's quite interesting. I like that twist again, and it kind of feels like that Taiko had all of this in his head when he made the Council of Regents. If they can't work together and are unable to, all 5 of them, come to decisions, then everything will stall. And that's part of the plan that he had in place. If Toranaga wasn't going to accept to be sole leader of Japan when he made that offer to him, which we saw back in Chapter 2, then I'll make this stalemate between the 5 leaders who must work together, or else there will be consequences. Absolutely. They must have 5 of them at all times working together.
Absolutely. It's all buying Toranaga time, more and more and more and more time.
Exactly.
By doing this. So yeah, it's really, really interesting.
Yeah. Let's talk about Toranaga in our final Bushido, our Bushido 5. Because we hear a lot of talk about Crimson Sky. So I guess it's to Crimson Sky or not to Crimson Sky. That is the question.
Well, that's it. I mean, like, earlier on, so we have Hiromatsu returning from Osaka, sort of falling off the horse in the village of Ajiro, and then being, immediately there's a council that goes on, and he talks about it is time to invoke a long, plotted plan of Crimson Sky, which is effectively to eliminate the regents and install a new government. And you have Toranaga's son being up for this, to be the sole regent, the shogun, the reclaiming of the family birthright of shogun. And
this seems like something that Toranaga's son would just do in a heartbeat anyway. He wouldn't do it without any planning. He'd be running into Osaka, claiming, I am the new shogun, give me my power.
It is the impulsiveness of it. And Toranaga is not convinced. I do really like here that he does ask Omi here about this, and who effectively cautions against it. He says, why risk open warfare when we still have time? Again, making the point about we have time on our side at the moment. No one has come from Osaka to meet them in the battlefield. Yes, they've lost many soldiers from the mudslides, but they're still not in open warfare. Why attack this huge citadel of Osaka fortress, which is, you know, going to cost more lives? And when we have the time. So, you know, he said it's too risky to do Crimson Sky. And Toranaga seemingly takes that on board and says it's not time for Crimson Sky at this moment.
But this is also Omi's misalignment, I guess, with Toranaga. I think this is why Omi is cautioning against it, is because if they go to war, he has to take that side on Toranaga's side, and he has to fight with him like a bannerman would. But he's not there yet, and especially in this episode when all of the gifts that have been bestowed upon him by Toranaga are taken away, and the position that he has in his own village as the partner of Kiku is also been stripped from, because that's been given to John. So I think part of Omi's opinion is coming from him being not as aligned with it.
It's twofold.
Yeah.
His motivation is from a different place, but the outcome of it aligns with Toranaga's, which is more time, because ultimately when Crimson Sky is invoked, it is coming after Sugiyama's death. Because there is motion that then it will accelerate to get a fifth member on the council, even though there is a delay here from that, because the other regents will be absolutely petrified.
Yeah.
They are currently hostages in Osaka. So the pressure, you know, is being put to bear on the remaining regents. You know, Lady Oshiba's impatience is adding this pressure, squeezing, forcing the issue. And so for Toranaga, it's, you know, if I'm going to be falsely impeached, you know, I'm looking for no honors, he says, I'm looking for no titles or wealth. But if the traitor threatens the heir, I must act.
Yes.
Especially as Sugiyama has just been killed. So it will be Crimson Sky here. And interestingly here, that we also hear that he will ask his half-brother for support to provide his army to his cause.
Yeah, which is, I suppose, at least he has an option here, you know, after the earthquake and mudslide took out some of his army. So he does have some allies that he needs to get in contact with, which I guess is interesting, you know, given that we had the 5 leaders of the clans, members of the region, of the Council of Regents, and Toranaga splitting off from that. And you felt he's pretty isolated. He's on his own. They at least have those 4 armies that could go up together against Toranaga. Yeah. At least he possibly has an ally that he can reach out to swell, I suppose, the army that he has, because it would feel quite small going up against Osaka and potentially 4 armies.
Absolutely. And interestingly, you know, in terms of this decision to invoke Crimson Sky, he uses Sugiyama as a pretext for it. But what we see earlier is Toranaga talking to Mariko about Lady Ochiba. He knows that they used to be friends. And, you know, why is she turned against us? And believes that she wars without honor. And Mariko responds to him, you know, well, you are all men. You go to war for conquest, power, pride, honor. Women, for women at this time, we are simply at war.
Yes.
She is having to use the tools that she can, and only she can, for her war. He sees her being dishonorable. She is having to use men for herself. Yeah. Without seemingly using men because she is a woman. So there's this notion of this conflict, this battle that women are constantly in. So that is why she operates in these ways. But we have also that Toranaga saying that, you know, we get this reveal of Miriko's father's plan was always to keep her separate from the fight. This kind of, as we said, putting her off the chessboard. And
until she's not, which is really important.
Exactly. And so that she may finish it. So, you know, he's here. He says to her, your war is not over. You have not failed him. She feels she's failed him. You know, she's still asking all these conversations around taking her own life. Buntaro won't allow it. You know, you are needed. As she is told of her fate, her destiny, that her part in this conflict, this war, is not over.
Yeah.
And will you take up the honor and duty that her father subtly bestowed upon her by marrying her to a worthless plan, an alliance,
just to keep her out of the way until her part comes around. Yeah, I really like this. And as I said earlier on, as we discussed it, the fact that Mariko has gone through her entire life and this awful marriage to Buntaro, thinking her father was just getting rid of her from the court, when actually he was protecting her for a future purpose, not just protecting her to keep her alive and, putting the little woman behind a man to keep her safe. Not just that. He was putting this warrior, we saw her training with the Naginata earlier on, and everybody agreeing she is a great warrior. And so he's not just putting her behind a man, which may have been what she thought was happening. He was putting her there to keep her safe so that when in the future it was required to take down the new leader of Japan, Ishido in this case, she would be there ready to go and be on the side of Toranaga. So really love that little machination, and seeing the reaction on Mariko's face when she has the plot revealed to her, I thought was just really well done.
Yeah. So, as Saruman said, to war.
To war.
It is, to Crimson Sky. So,
Absolutely.
Really good.
Excellent. I think that's it for the episode. There's loads in there. And we have talked quite a long time about this episode because there's just so much going on.
Absolutely.
There's so many great moments in there. Really, really enjoyed it. Other than that, John, do you have any notes other than the main points that we talked about?
Just one quick one. And that's, we do have a brief scene with the Portuguese priests here that are actually also noticing the political shift in Osaka. So he's been refused from the gates, the main emissary here of the Jesuit order of Portugal, and his number two, effectively, they are talking about it being time to ally with Toranaga because Lady Ochiba also hates Christians, we find out here.
Yes.
And they can see that the attack on Toranaga has accelerated since her return, that they note that she hates him, that she is a child of a murdered Busho. So they realize the politics that she can have here, or at least the younger priest does. I do like the fact that when he suggests they need to ally with Toranaga, the head emissary does say, we need to pray on it, let us pray on it, because seemingly it would be unchristian to sort of do this, but let us pray. Maybe we will be told to do it by God, and therefore it's fine.
Yes.
So pretend to pray, pretend to get the word from God, and then it's like, well, but ultimately it's my mind saying that is the strategic thing to do.
Exactly.
So I kind of like that ultimately the Portuguese emissaries here in the form of the priests are now increasingly looking at the need to ally with Toranaga.
Yes.
Which is interesting.
Absolutely. Let's see how that part of the story plays out in the future. The only other note for me, or only other thing I wanted to say about the episode really is just, that interesting thing about Lady Ochiba here, where it does feel like she's the daughter of the Mad King. And again, another one of those stories that we've seen play out in many other forms. Again, I'll mention Game of Thrones. It's one of those stories where Lady Oshiba's coming back after being sent away when her father was slayed. So I kind of like that she's coming back with revenge, and she does have a little bit of that crazy madness behind the eyes as well, that she could want to level the entire palace if people don't do what she wants them to do. So while she's not on the council, they're working for her now, and if somebody gets in the way, she'll get rid of them effectively.
Absolutely.
So that's partly why I guess Sugiyama and his family were fully killed. But also interesting, just want to make a note of this as well. Hiromatsu, who ran to Toranaga to tell him the news of what was going on in Osaka, he did leave the rest of his family behind so that he could make the trip to Toranaga. His daughter, I think, who's pregnant, couldn't get on the horse as he's trying to escape, and they're effectively saying, well, you need to go. But they're left behind in Osaka, which is a very dangerous place to be at the moment, I think.
Absolutely.
Especially for someone that's allied with Toranaga.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff, John. Overall, any final thoughts on the episode?
I absolutely loved this episode. I'd give it 5 fluffy pillowings out of 5. I just thought there was so much that was brilliantly done. I mean,
Yes.
I actually think this is real exceptional performances, nuance, subtlety, within the observations being done by the performers here in these different scenes. As I said, at the tea house, negotiating for the tea house, I think in Osaka with Lady Ochiba, I think, even in the flashback with Lord Akeshi Jinsai, and his daughter, Mariko, really, really good. I just think, the directing really good.
Yes.
The writing really good. Everything's just superb about this show. So 5 fluffy pillowings out of 5.
Absolutely. And the makeup on John on the morning after.
Yeah.
Let's give that a shout out again. Great stuff. Let's head over and get some feedback from our wonderful fellow warriors. Yes, so we have some feedback in on Chapter 5 of Shogun. First up, we got an email in from Penny Lennox who says, "Greetings, Derek and John. I love this show so much. I wake up on Tuesday mornings and say, ooh, new Shogun episode today. I'm so glad you decided to cover it." On the official Shogun podcast, Justin Marks says that Buntaro truly loves Mariko-sama and describes his motivation as a deep need to protect her. I don't see that at all in his actions or manner with her. He seems to resent her, and in that dinner scene he humiliated her. Physical violence and spousal abuse don't seem like love to me, nor does shooting those arrows so close to her face. What do you guys think? Maybe episode 6 will make this more clear? I understand that there are language and cultural barriers to communication, but in the few days it took for the pheasant to get truly malodorous and frighten the rest of the village, could Fuji-sama not have had Mariko-sama translate her concerns to Blackthorne? Simple communication would have averted some tragedy. With this society's apparent belief in curses and bad omens, I predict that the village will blame Blackthorne and his stinky pheasant for the earthquake. The opening title sequence is absolutely beautiful. I wanted to give a shout out to Elastic, who designed the sequence, and composers Atticus Ross, Leopold Ross, and Nick Chuba, who scored it. Keep up the great podcasting, Penny. That opening sequence is absolutely gorgeous, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Love watching it.
It really is. I mean, and I love the music, and I mean, I think with Atticus Ross, I love just like the electronic elements, and synthesizer elements that he brings into the scores, like he's done many a time, such as with Watchmen, with Trent Reznor. Of course, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross being a real duo in scoring of different TV and movie themes.
Yeah, I think they started out with Social Network, and then they've been doing loads and loads of stuff.
So it's interesting. Trent Reznor's not on this, but you can still sense some of that sort of deep, dark synthesizer element to this towards the end of that opening sequence, which is really good. For sure. It is, isn't it? Buntaro is just like truly awful here. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's the weirdness about it. It's interesting that Justin Mark says that, he does truly love Mariko. So I think it'll be interesting to see what comes up over the next few episodes.
Yeah. I feel like that's a premature comment to put on the official podcast from Justin Marks. I think we haven't seen that on screen from Buntaro at all.
Not at all.
We've almost seen him look at Mariko as a possession, as his wife, but that's it, and she's a lower class of human to him almost.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, Penny, I would have similar kind of view around Buntaro, that he resents her. It's like he resents the position that he's been put in with her, this kind of arranged marriage. Yeah. Which in a sense is no fault of his, with that arrangement coming from, fathers and, dare I say it, Lord Toranaga, potentially. So I think, his position's not great, but he's certainly not showered himself with, sympathy, because he has demonstrated that physical violence and abuse to her. And so, I would agree with your interpretation there. It's certainly mine as well. Yeah,
agreed. And it's kind of like he has that complete resentment to her, as we heard the story in this episode of what it is that Mariko has been carrying from her past, what she's been blamed for, her father being the killer of the last leader of Japan, effectively. So prior to the Taiko, so it's like as if he's looking at her going, "You've ruined my reputation from the start. You've been married into my family, and I've had to carry the shame of who you are, and all you ever want to do is kill yourself," kind of thing. So, so I don't see it in these episodes yet. But
absolutely.
But potentially there's something there in the future, but I don't know why I don't know how we as an audience would have perceived that from Buntaro's actions so far.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe it's the constraints of society on him as well, and that is what has bred the resentment. But surely, in private, he wouldn't need to demonstrate that or, have some kind of discourse. I mean, it just seems that the conversations between the two of them are so tense and awkward.
And Mariko's scared of him in a way.
Absolutely.
She's very strong, but she said to John Blackthorne before he even arrived in the house, make sure you treat him with the respect he deserves, because he can get very angry. And then once he starts getting drunk, it's watch out. He's angry. He's drunk. He won't take any crap from you. You tell him the story that he asks you to tell him, basically. So,
and I think as stinky pheasants go, it's interesting it got so stinky. To be honest, I think it was because they were hanging it outside in the rain. The village of Ajiro does seem to be very wet.
It is. It's
very, very wet.
It's like Britain and Japan.
It is really. So, I think it's because it basically got wet. Ultimately, because I do remember having pheasants hanging, effectively to age them.
Right.
But you do it in the dry and cold so that they don't stink.
I wonder,
maybe you gut them first as well.
Yeah.
I can't remember now. It's such a long time ago.
I wonder, are we supposed to take it that John Blackthorne's trying to create something from his home, but isn't very good at cooking?
Exactly.
He isn't the renowned chef that he they might think he is. But
he's not a chef at all.
Well, exactly. But I guess from Fuji's point of view, she's doing what her master commands, I guess, what John Blackthorne commands, the master of the household. So she would she have the conversation with Mariko to explain to him that everybody here doesn't want to touch it? You said if anybody touches it, they die. I guess it could have resolved the issue, absolutely, but again, we're seeing the two different cultures clash here, and his misspeaking of anybody who touches it will die leads to this terrible tragedy in the household. So yes, it would have cleared it up, absolutely, if they had that conversation. But it's only a few days. I think it's only 2 days or so.
Yeah.
And Mariko's got her hands full with the return of her husband. So
yeah. Thanks so much, Penny, for the feedback. Really glad you're enjoying the podcast and following along with us.
Absolutely. Speaking of Buntaro, the one thing I found out this week that for some reason I didn't realize when we were podcasting about these episodes, that Buntaro is actually Fuji's uncle.
Okay, yeah. No, I hadn't really grasped that either, but I think it makes sense with Hiromatsu as well, being her granddad?
Yeah, her grandfather, yeah.
Or great uncle or whatever it is, yeah. So,
draw out these family trees sometimes.
Well, absolutely. It's, I guess, a bit like European royal families. It's very intertwined.
It could be.
But thanks so much again, Penny. We also got an email from Victor who says, "Yo, warriors. Wow, peasants sure had it tough in 1600s Japan. I guess someone must clear the battlefield. Lord Toranaga may have coined the phrase, keep your friends close and enemies closer, in reference to Yabushige. I can't say I'm a fan of JB's culinary skills. What was the plan for the pheasant? The JB Buntaro sake-laced dinner showdown was both amusing and a bit harrowing. Buntaro surely is a master samurai if he could hit that gatepost twice. I was surprised he could even draw the bow. Not much of a husband by Western terms. The delivery of Josen's head to Ishido reminds me of the Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes scene from The Godfather. The cinematography of the quake and mudslide were amazing. It looks like Toranaga lost most of his army. What now? Lady Ochiba seems quite the dragon lady seizing power. This series has me totally enthralled. Sayonara, Hatamoto von Doom. Thanks so much, Victor, for the feedback. As I say, I think the plan for the pheasant was probably just to age it, gut it, and then probably pluck it and roast it.
Yeah.
That's what I would be thinking. I think he possibly just wasn't at his home for long enough. He didn't really seem to be around as it was getting rotten from the damp, wet weather. For sure. I think totally agree. You know, the whole thing with John Blackthorne, Buntaro, Mariko, and Fuji was, you know, it was really interesting. You know, partially lads' night out on the drink and Durs, and then suddenly quite harrowing with you know, his wife's safety. Certainly given how much sake he had drank. And yeah, definitely, I think what is going to happen with Toranaga now with his army having been sort of severely depleted from the earthquake and the huge mudslide, which you rightly point out, you know, it was amazing visuals there.
Yeah.
And Lady Ochiba, I just think was such a class entrant.
Wasn't it just?
You know, really oozing authority in a world where she technically doesn't have any.
Yeah, given that she only had a few minutes on screen, there was lots of big reaction to her once the episode was released. It was
really
cool.
great performance there.
Absolutely. And a really good note there from Victor about the cleanup at the opening of the episode for the poor peasants in the village who had to pick up half bodies of the of Josen's dead army as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thanks so much, Victor.
Absolutely. Thanks, Victor. Over on Facebook, Jamie Lawton says the earthquake scene was truly terrifying. Then came Lady Ochiba, the real power in the realm.
Definitely.
You could just tell the presence of Lady Ochiba when she arrived on the scene. It's just fantastic. Great opener. She just feels like a villain from the second she walks on screen. And then in this episode, we learned much more about her history and her backstory, I suppose, and why she feels like the power belongs to her. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jamie. And Dr. Bob Phillips says, Bunty's back, still deeply annoying and clearly disappointed Mariko is still John's interpreter. I never expected a drinking contest with soup bowls, though, with William Tell archery and a tragic backstory. The head of Yosen might have been pushing it a bit, but I'm getting even more impressed with Toranaga-sama and his political skills. To end on an earthquake and the Queen rising, though, cracking cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for the feedback, Dr. Bob. Yes, hang out the bunting, because Bunty is back in town. I love the little nickname there. Although I guess, yeah.
I wouldn't want to call it to his face.
No, exactly. Wouldn't want to call him Bunty. Or, dare I say, I suspect Mariko wouldn't like to hang out the bunting for his arrival, given what happened. Yeah, the Toranaga's political skills, I just love that kind of whole side of it. The machinations, the plotting, the scheming, just really, really good. Yeah. And yes, I think a lot of the feedback here has mentioned Ochiba, just that silent authority and keen, cunning eye.
Absolutely.
You know, it's so good. It's such a good take.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. One of the things I should mention about the earthquake, which we talked about in last week's episode, and how cool an ending was because it came out of nowhere. Seemingly, we saw a small earthquake in the previous episode, big one in chapter 5. One of the things to mention, though, I presume John Blackthorne would have no idea what the hell is going on with the entire earth moving underneath his feet. There's no fault line that runs through the UK, so he wouldn't have experienced it in England.
You wouldn't have earthquakes on the same scale at all.
He may have read accounts of it from other captains that would have travelled across the world. He may have read stories about earthquakes, but this would be completely alien to him that that there could be these massive
it might be
movements
partially aware of it. I mean, you know, think of Vesuvius, southern Italy would have some tectonic activity, North Africa, in Morocco. So possibly it's not totally alien, but certainly in terms of experiencing it, it would be a whole new thing for him.
Absolutely.
To be honest.
Yeah.
And also just coming back to Dr. Bob's drinking contest with soup bowls, I guess it's just how they roll. It's almost, I would say, a bit like as a very young kid going to France for the first time and realizing you drank coffee out of a bowl.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You got those bowls that you would have the coffee and you dip your croissant into the coffee.
But it's also John Blackthorne trying to bring in the huge mugs of mead and huge mugs of beer that they would drink in bars, whereas he's been faced with little shot glasses of sake. I don't think he understands the difference of how powerful sake is. So that's why it's served in such small quantities when you drink a shot or drink it slowly over the course of your meal. The idea of knocking back an entire pint glass or a soup bowl of sake would kill me, I think.
But I wonder, it must be used as something analogous to whiskey.
Yeah, but this is strong. This is like drinking poutine, John. Like this is.
But so would whiskey back in the day.
Well, true.
I would think.
Yeah, they do suffer for it, pretty badly.
Yeah.
It does. I get the feeling, even though Buntaro is this very strong character, I get the feeling he wouldn't be very used to drinking soup bowls full of sake, multiple soup bowls full of sake either. So,
no.
Yeah, interesting one.
Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody, for your feedback. Keep sending it in. Email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. We'll talk about your feedback on Chapter 6 in next week's podcast. That's it for our chat about Chapter 6 of Shogun. I guess that means next week, Chapter 7, a stick of time.
Interesting.
A stick of time, not a stick in time. I wonder what that means.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I guess we can't wait to find out. In 1 week's time, we will be back with our chat all about Shogun Chapter 7. Thanks so much for joining us for our chats about Shogun. I hope you're enjoying it, and I hope you're sending us in feedback as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, fellow warriors, for joining us. Of course, please remember to share the podcast, because sharing the podcast is, of course, sharing the love.
It is.
You can also subscribe, rate us, review us on any podcast catcher of your choice. You can also join us and support us over on patreon.com or buymeacoffee.com as well. But we will be back next week for Chapter 7. And in the meantime, remember, please keep watching and, of course, keep listening.
Bye.
Bye.